Have this up, and you can see this is the easiest objectives ever. It's one list. It's like know the stuff in the pictures and on the models, yes? So, but like a lot of labs, this has a list. It's only one page, but it has a list of stuff they want you to know. All right, so we're going to go over this list. I'm going to be reading off of this list, but I'm flipping back to the projector so I can show you pictures as we go. Are we good so far? Yeah? Not enough people nodding. Is this making sense? All right. Okay. So, going back. Would you agree that from bottom to top, the epidermis is stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidium, stratum corneum, right? Corneum has a special meaning. Now, fingernails made out of keratin. Your hair is made out of keratin. The horn of a rhinoceros is made out of keratin. Cow's horns made out of keratin. Horses' hooves made out of keratin. It's a tough protein. You with me? Okay. Cornified means like a horn or horn-like. Okay. Yesterday I made this thing saying it as horny and people laughed, and that's not the goal. We're talking about the fact it's tough like the horns of a cow. Does that make sense? Okay. The outer layer is full of keratin. In fact, later on when we talk about specialized features on cells, they could be, and this is in table 5.3 in your lab book, one of the features they could have is those cells could be keratinized. The stratum corneum, they're all packed full of keratin, so we say they're keratinized. Everybody good? Just make them tough. All right. So you got that. You understand the concept. Stratum basale, single layer of cells. Most of those are skin stem cells that will be dividing and making new cells that are always moving upwards towards the stratum corneum, towards the air above the stratum corneum. Does that make sense? Okay. About 14 to 20%, depends on how protected you are against UV radiation, against skin cancer, stuff like that. About 20% or less of the stratum basale, of that single layer, those are melanocytes, cells that make melanin, cells that make the pigment in your skin. The more pigment you have, the more resistant you are to sun damage. Does that make sense? Very good. So melanocytes make melanin. And I'm going to jump to, if we have a picture in this logbook that does not suck. Okay. I started to say lab book. I should have said lab book. All right, I'm going to flip to the old book and put it up because I think it has better pictures. And then you hear me say, oh, I like that book better. It's because of the pictures. All right, so here, I'm going to show you a picture, and it's on page 91 of the old book, but to help make that more useful to you, because that doesn't mean anything, we have the same picture on 193 in your textbook. All right? Just 193, I'll blow it up so it's a little brighter and prettier. But what I want you to get at is that was too bright, is those layers. The stratum basale, stratum spinosum, granulosum, lucidium, corneum. That's what we're going over. The basale is this single layer of cells. Do you agree? Okay. And in it, we have here, this is a melanocyte. Melanocytes are easy to spot because they have branch. I'm going to try to focus that because that's not well focused.
What page number you said that was?
In the textbook, that is 193.
Thank you.
And get that to focus. Come on. There we go. So much prettier. Can you see it? It's got branches going this way and that way and that way and that way, that way, that way. These are branches between the cells in the interstitial space. You with me? That's because they do a really special job. They don't just make melanin pigment to protect themselves. They protect everybody else. They are making the sunscreen to protect the nucleus. Does this make sense? Let's zoom in more to make it more obvious. I suppose that means I need to move that away. Yeah, okay. Do you see all these little dots? Those are melanin pigments that are traveling from the melanocyte. It sends extensions up between the cells and tries to send pigment out. Does that make sense? When that pigment collects, it's not going to collect in the entire cell. It's going to collect on the side of that cell that faces the sun. Because the goal is to intercept those light rays, those UV rays, those damaging rays that could screw up the DNA, intercept them before they get to the DNA, absorb them. Are we good? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So, melanocyte, easy to spot because of its shape. Now, actually, we should look. This one's heavily branching. This one probably is melanocyte. This other one might be the Merkel cell. I'm going to go back to the other picture to show you. But melanocyte, lots of branching. Got to spot the lots of branching. All right, so going back to the old lab book, we'll look at the same thing. I'm going to zoom over here. So it's stratum basal. Melanocyte, lots of branching, giving off melanin pigments to the other cells. Does that make sense? Everybody good? I'm not going to nod. That's a very faint nod. You got it? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. And we're going to collect the melanin on the side of the nucleus that faces the sun to try and protect the sun. This one's well done. You can see it pretty well. Would you agree there's more melanin here and there's less down here? Yeah? That's why. We're trying to protect the nucleus from the sun. There's a third type of cell in here called a Merkel cell. Okay? That senses pressure, senses touch. Bug walk on your skin, it sends a signal down this nerve extension to a nerve. Like, hey, I'm being touched. The skin's being touched. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, stratum basal, single layer thick, full of these stem cells that are kind of cube-shaped. Good? As they reproduce and make new cells that go up, they die. The stem cell survives, but the ones that put up above, they die. Let's talk about the why. We can go back in your lab book to page 90. I think your textbook will show it better. On page 186 in your textbook. Everybody good? I'm going to zoom out. All right, let me... Dang it. Okay, I'll hold it. Actually, what I should do is bring a cart. All right, y'all can see this, yes? All right, I'm going to darken it up a touch so it doesn't look so washed out. I got some things to point out. We already talked about the epidermis, and you know the layers of it, even though this picture is too small to see them. You know that everything there is epidermis, yes? Okay. You know everything below that is dermis. You know the top of the dermis is the papillary layer. See how little of it is? It's really, really tiny. It's just where the papillae are. Everything else in the dermis is the reticular layer. Are we good? Yeah. All right. But notice where the blood is. This is super important. We have blood vessels down here. We have blood vessels going up in the dermis and nothing in the epidermis. You see that? All right, I'm going to write it down with the fancy words, but you already understand the concept. I'm going to flip back in your lab book to a picture that shows something really good. I'm saying something good about your book. I'm saying something because I've never seen any book that got this right. The phrase that we are always taught about epidermal cells. I'm going to put it down. You're going to write it down. I'm going to erase it because it didn't mess up the picture then. Epidermis is a vascular and innervated. You with me? A vascular and innervated. Now, what does that mean? Avascular is it's got no blood vessels. The blood is down in the dermis. Are you with me? Innervated, it does have nerves that go up inside of it. The epidermis has nerves, but no blood vessels, and I expect you to know that. That's been a test question before. Does that make sense? Are we good? All right, so that's epidermis. And now let's talk about what that means. We will go back to this picture that we were just looking at before. Let's talk about right here. This is what layer? The purple in the pictures is the louder? Oh, well, the capillary is right here. Yeah, if that's what you're talking about. What I meant was that this is part of the epidermis, and then I was going to point out the bottom of right here is the stratum basale. Does that make sense? Now, the stratum basale is one layer thick. You already saw a close-up of it. You know that. You already know the types of cells in it. It has the basal cells that make keratinocytes. It has the Merkel cells that do sense. It has the melanocytes that make pigment, right? Yeah. But notice, it is very close to the blood supply, very close to the oxygen, very close to the nutrients. Do we agree? It can survive. The base layer with the stem cells stays alive because it's got all the things you need to be alive. There are only 2 layers that are able to do mitosis because they're still alive. And they are the basal layer and the spinosum, which is above it. It's alive-ish. They're on the way to dying because they're already moving away from the blood, moving away from the oxygen. Does that make sense? But these 2 right here, these 2 layers of skin are mitotically active. Fancy way of saying they're still alive, they can still do the things. Stratum corneum, they're dead. They're as dead can be because they've been gone away from the oxygen for a long time. Does this make sense? In fact, they're basically dried out sacs of keratin. What you have left is the membrane of the keratin. Nucleus, mostly gone. All the organelles, all gone. Cell dead. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, as we're moving away, we have some things going on. So the spinosum, they're named because they get spiny shaped. I'm going to draw a picture, okay? We'll go back to a better picture where you can see them. This is obviously way too zoomed out. But they have little edges, little pokey things, okay, little corners. That's because that's where the cytoskeleton is poking. Does this make sense? Are we good? This illustration works better with older students who remember malls. All right. But when I was younger, I used to it's Valentine's Day, you have to get a thing for your girlfriend, you go to the mall. Okay? I know, malls don't exist anymore. They got killed by the online. But you used to go walk through a mall, and you could see things around Valentine's Day. Oh, I can pull the picture. No, I can't because I have to flip back and forth. They don't take too long. Damn it. Okay. They really need to wire this like East Campus. East Campus is like instantaneous fast. Anyway, I could find, get your girlfriend a red rose inside a balloon. Have anybody ever seen that? Nobody's nodding at all. Figures. But you could get a red rose in a balloon. If you let the air out, what happens to the balloon rubber? It gets stretched over the thorns of the rose, yes? Okay. If the membrane starts to go in because the cell starts to dry out, starts to lose fluid, then the membrane gets stretched over those spiky cytoskeleton pieces sticking out like thorns. Does that make sense? That's why the stratum spinosum is spinosum. They may be alive, but they're not happy, and they're not healthy, and they're on their way to drying out and dying. That's why they're pokey looking. Does that make sense? Now, the last thing they do before they die, they make a bunch of little granules, little collections of molecules. And those things stain dark. A lot of them are protokeratohyaline. Stuff will eventually become keratin. Okay? But they have a bunch of dots in this layer, and that's why the stratum granulosum, we call it granulosum, because it's full of these little dark staining granules. Are you good? Does it make sense? Okay. You already know lucidium, because it's clear. You already know that the corneum, think I'm going to draw like bull horns. You with me? Make our bull look tough. So tough outer layer. And this, it might be 20 cells thick. It's a thick layer. Why? Well, say I'm walking along, I'm talking to somebody, I'm not paying attention. I bump into the edge of the table and I scrape the skin. I scrape up a few layers. Who cares? If I got 20 layers, does that make sense? Yeah. Stratified squamous, write it down, know it. Stratified squamous is to protect you. Anywhere you have abrasion and rubbing, you want stratified squamous. Yeah, I'm getting one of those things that will be said in histo if we get to histo. But let me make it really, really clear. This is stratified squamous on the outside. I can run a razor over my cheek. Yeah, I don't care. This is stratified squamous too, huh? When you're chewing on foods and they're rubbing on your cheeks, you're not like, oh my God, because that's what happens with a single layer thick. But if it's 20 layers thick, does that make sense? Now it's still more sensitive because it doesn't have all the keratin the outer layer has. But anywhere that you need abrasion resistance, stratified squamous. So when you swallow down the esophagus, all the food rubbing on the wall, what do you think the wall is? Stratified squamous. All right. Let's be a little more blunt. The other end, where you're getting rid of poop, what do you think the lining of the rectum is? Stratified squamous. Does that make sense? Anywhere you got abrasion, anywhere you got rubbing, you want to be able to run a few layers off and we don't care. Stratified squamous. Are we good? All right. So, you got this breakdown of the layers. We've got that part of the study guide, even though they wrote it upside down for who knows why. Now, cells of that epidermis, we talked about melanocytes and how they make the melanin and how it protects us, yes? The more melanin, the less chance you're going to be someone getting skin cancer. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm pretty pale, pretend to be shocked. My mom had to have a cancerous thing taken off of her skin recently. Happens a lot to people who have really light colored skin. People who have dark skin, more melanin, they're better protected. It's not that they can't get skin cancer, but they can survive a lot better. Does that make sense? There's less chance of getting bad things happening like skin cancer. All right, dendritic cells, we haven't talked about that yet. I'm going to find a picture for you. Let's try to find one in your lab book, and then if we don't, our next bet will be to use your lecture book, because the lecture book has all the better pictures. And then go to the old lab book, which is better yet. But okay, so we're going to go for the lecture book. And all right, that is a great melanocyte picture. See how it's making all the melanin? Yeah, the melanin surrounding the nucleus to protect the nucleus. That's a good picture. All right, sorry, I'll get back on topic. I promise. There we go. All right. I don't like the way they did the picture because it's so far away, but I'm looking at this picture right here. Okay, this picture is in your textbook on 197. Write that down. Okay. They also have it shown on 196. What I'm talking about is this. You see how it has lots and lots of branches? You might think kind of like a melanocyte, but it's not because it's not down there in the base layer. Do you agree? It's not in the stratum vexillus. That has a very special job, a special name. It is, they're calling it immune function. That is sometimes called a dendritic cell. On your study guide, it's also called a Langerhans cell. You should know both names. I might use either one. So you see all of these pseudopodia, these branches sticking out. The people who named it a dendritic cell thought it looked kind of like the dendrites coming off of a nervous cell. That's why they use that name. But it doesn't involve nerves at all. Those little branches are sticking out. They're going between other cells, in the interstitial space. That is looking for bacteria that are trying to invade your skin, trying to burrow their way through. And because it has branches going in every direction, there's a good chance that bacteria will bump into it. And if it does, it'll grab it, rip it apart, and put and hold pieces of it up. It then becomes what we call an antigen-presenting cell. It'll hold pieces of it up to white blood cells and say, this is what we're hunting now. This is what's trying to invade. Can you get that? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So it's really good at finding, and they even drew them in here, little bacteria. It wants to find bacteria trying to get in, and it wants to destroy them, and then set off the white blood cells to hunt them. Good. So, and that is part of the epidermis, but not down here in the stratum basale. If you see a branchy thing in the stratum basale, you're probably dealing with a melanocyte. If you see a branchy thing up here, it's probably a Langerhans cell. Are we good? Not enough nods, y'all with me? Okay, so on the study guide, would you agree we've talked about dendritic cells, we've talked about melanocytes, yes? We mentioned in passing, but didn't mention really well, Merkel cells, the sensory cells. Right here, I said it tries to feel pressure on the skin. If it feels it, it sends that information down this extension of a nerve, telling the nerve bad things are going on. Does that make sense? Or things are touching the skin? Not enough nods, y'all with? Okay, good. So we've done that one. We've done tactile cells. And yes, I want you to know them as both tactile cells and Merkel cells. I'm trying to see a picture that says that real nice. There's a picture of them again on 193, the one we looked at before, but I'm not seeing it labeled, but it's on the study guide, so you need to know it. Okay, Merkel cell. There's one more cell type in the epidermis. They have their keratinocytes. You already know they are the main type of cell in the epidermis. They are the ones that are packed full of keratin. They're what make the epidermis tough and durable. Yes? Good. All right. So we've gone through types of cells. Now that we've done that, here I'm going to break out old, less dreadful book. And I'm going to read the definitions out of that book. I have it blown up enough you can see it. Keratin cells, keratinocytes, they are the most common of the epidermal cells. Their main job is to make keratin, which is protective. Are we good? All right. And so, keratin's a fibrous protein that gives the epidermis durability and protection, and they are held tight to each other by desmosomes. Anybody remember when we talked about desmosomes in lecture before? They're part of the cell is hooked by a plaque to another plaque, and they have proteins in between that connect them. And then from this plaque to the other side of the cell where there's another plaque, you have a lot of cytoskeleton. So if you pull on this cell, this wall of this cell, it's transferred to the other wall, and then to the other cell, and to the other wall of the other cell. So this is why my skin doesn't tear when we do that. Does that make sense? Because those keratinocytes all hooked together by those desmosomes. All right, now melanocytes, they make the pigment. There are different types of melanin. There's a eumelanin, I can't remember the names on them, but there's a reddish melanin, there's a darker melanin. All of this protect us from ultraviolet radiation. And melanin is a protective layer, the pigment umbrella over the nucleus. Does that make sense? Are we good? Yep. Okay, shielding our DNA from the damaging effects of ultraviolet radiation. All right, freckles and moles are areas where we have a lot more melanin. That's why it's a dark spot. Good? Clear? All right. Dendritic cells, we did that. Also called Langerhans cells. Both of them are on your study guide. You need to know them both. All right, and you can see they're not written on this, but I wrote it in whenever I put it in the old lab book that we're looking at. Because I wanted to make sure people paid attention to the fact it's in the study guide. I want you to know Langerhans cells. Those are these guys right here that are the immune system. That picture in the other textbook, in your current textbook that shows it grabbing and eating bacteria, that's actually a really good picture. Because I've never seen the picture like that. It says, oh, it's killing bacteria, but it's killing bacteria. Are we good? All right. So you got that. You know what they do. migrate to the epidermis. So these are white blood cells that are formed in the bone marrow, and then they migrate into the skin and change shape and crawl around through the skin looking for things that need to die. Good? Yep. All right. Now, Merkel cells, they call them tactile epithelial cells, but you can see that's the same thing we were talking about before. Those are Merkel cells. They are sending signals to the nerves, yes? Okay. So what are they doing? Occasionally spiky looking, not always. Combination with sensory nerve endings form touch receptors located where the dermis and the epidermis come together. Everybody good with that? We've done all of the cell types on that study guide. Good? All the cell types left column. All right, so the next thing we got to talk about is the dermis. And we've already done pretty pictures of the dermis, so let's go right back here. This is dermis, yes? Everything below the papillary layer. The papilla are in the papillary layer, probably about 20% or less of the top. And then everything below that is the reticular layer that's full of reticular fibers, yes? Yep. Okay, so you got that. All right. Let's look down here at the study guide. I've moved down to dermis, and the things I have to point out are the dermal papilla that we've got here, and the free nerve endings. This is a free nerve ending. Let me try to zoom in and focus a little. So in the papilla, we have a free nerve ending. What is free? It's not packed up in a little corpuscle like that one is. Does that make sense? It's not packed up in a giant lamellar corpuscle like that one. It's free up there at the top. That's a free nerve ending. Now, I told you there are good things about your lab book too. I'm going to go to one of the things I think is good. This shows something that I've never seen before. There are free nerve endings that are up in the epidermis, and there are ones like you just saw before that are in the dermis, in the papilla still. Does that make sense? But this is the first picture I've seen that shows the epidermis is innervated, that shows that there are nerves going into the epidermis. Are we good? All right, good. All right, so things we need to do with the dermis. We have to do the dermal papilla, the free nerve endings, and the tactile corpuscles. Well, let's do the tactile corpuscle. That's not hard. These are the ones that are, here's my pointer, like this, where it was all packed up into a little container called a corpuscle. This picture doesn't show it quite as well. As this one, but you get the idea, tactile corpuscle, yes? All right, see some nods, that makes me happy. All right, now, that was in the papillary layer. Now we're going to talk about the reticular layer. You already know the reticular layer is most, I need to zoom out. The reticular layer is most of the dermis, yes? By the way, that's been a test question before. You should know it. You should remember it. Okay. But the thing we have to talk about in this reticular layer, now I'm just reading along, this is the very bottom of that list on the study guide, on the second page of the study guide. The very last thing it says is lamellar corpuscle. So let me pull it up. Oh, gosh, I don't know your name yet. Your name?
Me?
Yes, you. Jemiah? Mm-hmm. You're very clever. I'm going to pitch a question to you because I think you probably know. If you don't, it's no problem, because I have a feeling that if you know, most other people in the room won't. Okay, and if you don't, that's okay, because I'll tell you all the answer, and then we'll all know it together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you have a lot of faith in me. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Well, if this annoys you, tell me privately outside of class, and I might do less of that. Okay. Or in the class. Do you know the fancy schmancy anatomy word for layer?
For layer?
I don't mean strata, I mean an L word. Both of those mean layer, but an L word.
An L word?
Lamella means layer.
Yeah, no, I didn't know
Okay?
that.
Well, now everyone knows it because they're all going to write it down and they've all heard it and it's all been recorded. Lamella means layer. Good? So would you agree, now it's hard to see because this is a little too bright, but we're going to zoom in and then we'll be more clear. Would you agree that the lamellar corpuscle has got a whole bunch of layers to it, yes?
Okay.
There is another name for it that I want you to know. I don't remember if it's on the study guide or not. It's not, but I might ask it. You know, I asked mammary when I said no pectoral or mammary, so you got to know it. This could also be called, name of old dead anatomist, that's how they do this kind of thing. Might have been the discoverer, I don't know. A Pacinian corpuscle. So the lamellar corpuscle could also be called the Pacinian. And I will probably use this word instead of that word. And the reason why is that the P in Pacinian will remind you that it senses pressure. Does that make sense? Okay. But you need to know Pacinian, P-A-C-I-N-I-A-N, Pacinian. Everyone good with that? Yep. But I love using this on tests. Why? Because it looks like an onion that is cut in half. It's easy to spot. You use that on a picture, use that on a microscope, there's no reason to not know what that is. You can recognize that. Now, did you memorize the words? That's up to you. But you will recognize that. You will know, oh, that's a thing in the dermis. Does that make sense? That's that thing, the pressure in the
onion in the dermis.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So
right on the test, though.
I've had people try that, but a lot of times I'll write something in margin like, nice try, or yeah, you kind of remember, but that's not worth the point, things like that. All right, but we've gotten through the whole left side of the terms to know on the study guide. Do you agree?
Yes.
All right, so let's start on the right side. The right side only has two things, what's happening in fingernails, what's happening in hair. Do we agree? All right. So first, let's use your lab book, and we'll look at what they have. And then we will scoff and say, yeah, that's crap. That's no good. All right, so here is a picture of a fingertip. And yeah, it's labeled, but let's be honest. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it's so great, the detail, because it's a picture of a cadaver, so you know it's right. None of us are working with cadavers in this class. There will be no cadavers on the test. Let's go to something that's more relevant and more useful. Let's use your textbook on page use your textbook on page 198, the lecture book. Good? Write that down. Write it in your lab book. This picture sucks. Look at page 198. Here, this, let's see if I can get zoomed out and then turn it. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. How far will it let me turn this? Let me do this. I'm going to put this picture upside down, and then I'm going to see how far I can turn this thing. All right, we're going there, and then we're going to go that far. Yeah, okay, I can do this. No, not quite. All right. Oh, I just turned out the light. We're going to do the best we can. All right, I'll turn the book, and we'll make it work. What do we have here? All right, that's doing that. And that's doing that. There we go. So page 198 in your textbook. Everybody good with that? All right. So what we have is a picture of the tip of the finger that is much easier to understand. It's not all wrinkly and messed up like a cadaver. Things that we need to know. The body of the nail. Everything that you can see, the skin, everything that's uncovered is going to be the body of the nail. Let's see if they have that written on this picture. I have to put on my readers. Yeah, nail body. Labeled right there. You guys see it? Do I need to zoom in or are you good? Okay. If you touch the fingernail, that's the body. Okay. So that's easy. Now the next thing is the free edge. That's super easy. Where do you cut with your nail clippers? That's the free edge. Okay. Now, the next thing that it talks about is the hyponychium. Hypo means what?
Below.
Below. Nychium is our fancy schmancy anatomy word for the nail. So, here's our free edge where we cut the nail, and the space underneath it, if you've been gardening and you've got to clean out the dirt under your fingernails, been in the garage, got to clean out the oil on your fingernails, what you're doing is removing the gunk from your hyponychium, the area below the nail. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. There's your hyponychium. Let's see, how did they label it? Yeah, they did, but I would have made that arrow come from the other direction. I wouldn't put that bracket on the top. But that's just me. But you can see that the area under the edge between the nail and the skin, there's a hyponychium. Everyone good? Not good enough knowledge. Y'all with me? All right, so we got that. The next one is the root. All right. I'm going to draw a tree. I know I have new skills. Oh, I have green this time. This is great. Yesterday I didn't have green. All right. So we got a tree, and it's got some branches that I don't care about, and it's got some leaves on top that just for effect. All right, so here we've got the ground, and then we have some pieces of tree that go down below, and they're all branching off. What are these pieces that stick down in the dirt and are not exposed to the air?
Roots.
The roots, yes. Okay. So let me say it another way. Anything exposed to the air we would call the tree. Do you agree? Anything below the down in the dirt, not exposed to the air, we call the roots. Yes. All right. Up here, we're going to call this the nail plate. Okay, this is the nail. Once you get it down here, this part that's not exposed to the air, that's down in the tissue, that's going to be the nail root. Are you with me? Okay. So that's not that scary. All right.
Is that the part when you really damage or smash your finger way down here why your fingernail doesn't grow right? If you damage that.
Let's try again.
No.
How about you smash your finger in the car door so hard that it turns purple and then falls off? Yes, because you killed a bunch of tissue down there in the root. But not everything, because it eventually grows back, yeah? Okay. Now, talk to me later about what happens if you drop 20 pounds of lead on your toe on end. Let's move on. Anyway, so that's the nail bed. The next thing we have to talk about is the nail matrix, okay? The nail bed and the nail matrix. This is really the same thing with different names for different spots. Are you with me? So here we have the nail plate. That's the actual nail. And below that we have the nail bed. Good, good. But the minute we get far enough back that we're not exposed to air, we no longer talk about, well, I shouldn't say it that way. The nail bed is the nail bed until it gets to here. And then when that nail bed is wrapped around and is on both sides of the nail root, it's not the bed anymore, it's the matrix. Are we good? Yeah, okay. So that's the nail matrix. The bed, when it's just below the plate and there's air above it on the other side, once that bed is on both sides of the root, we don't call it bed, we call it matrix. Good? Right, we've done all that. We've got two more that I want you to do. One of them, well, first of all, let's review. What do we call this area where you clean your fingernails? Is the area below the fingernails going to be an H word?
Hyponychium.
Hyponychium. Good, good, good. So hypo means below. What means above?
Epi.
Yeah. But guess what?
Or epi.
That doesn't mean, yeah, you were right where it's going. That doesn't mean that anatomists always spell the same way. So right here, EPO, EPO, same thing as EPA. We mean above. So there is an area right here at the back of the nail plate. It's a little circle of skin. Here, I'll show you on mine. All right, we'll have to get brighter. And then we'll get our pokey thing that I dropped on the floor. Anybody get tacos at Taco Tuesday?
No.
No? Okay, so you got tacos? Yeah. I took a paper clip and a Taco Tuesday squishy thing, and I made my pointer. That was about 3 years ago, but I still use it. I used to put a straightened up paper clip here, and housekeeping kept coming and throwing away my straightened out paper clip. So I actually had one of these last semester that had written on it, "Do not throw away my pointer." I'm eventually going to replace the paper clip with something so they're, less like a little rod of steel. Anyway, let's focus. This area of skin right here, that in anatomy speak is the eponychium. Now, in normal human speak, it is the what? I'm looking for a C word.
Cuticle.
The cuticle. Right, but in this class, if you write cuticle, no points. Is that clear? We have to use the anatomy word as the eponychium because it is above the nail plate. Would this be better as darker or lighter? I think lighter. Okay. The other thing I want you to know is this area in front of the eponychium, this white little thing, that's called the lunule because somebody with a really good sense of imagination thought it looked like the moon. Does that make sense? Hey, guess what? We're done with the parts you need to know on nails. Good? And I feel good because we did use the current textbook at least. The lab book may still suck, but we use the current textbook. We are using the things that they kind of want us to use. All right, now the next thing, let's look at hair. And we can try using the pictures in your lab book. We'll go back and we'll say, dang it, and we'll go back to the textbook. But we tried. Okay. So here we have hair follicles. Slices showing pieces of the hair follicle. This is the bulb at the bottom of the root, but we'll get to that. This is a close-up. This is actually a good part. This is in your lab book on 133. We'll probably come back to it. But what we're going to do first, we're going to look in your lecture book at some of these things. We may do the whole thing. Let's see if we can, just based on lecture book 199. If we can't find everything we need, we'll go back to a further zoomed out picture, okay? But this is a hair follicle. This is hair. I know you're like, so what? You tell me we can't see the base, and you tell me to darken it up. Are you guys okay if I erase the red stuff? All right. I think that'd be better. So,
What page is this in the lecture?
199, I said that about 30 seconds ago. That's okay. I understand, I'm saying a lot of things, it's hard to keep up. All right, so here we have this picture in the lecture book. It's figure 6.10 if you want to write that down too. But if you look at this, we have epidermis, dermis. We have a hair follicle down in the dermis, yes? Okay. Now a couple things I want you to notice. Do you see that this color is purple? Yeah? You see the stratum basale, the stratum spinosum, the stratum granulosum are purple in this picture? This is cool. The hair follicle, it's still in the dermis, but the cells that make up its wall, embryologically, they're derived from epidermis. It's like where you're going to have a hair follicle, you have a spot that you have epidermal tissue. It's like, I'm out of here, and it dives down deep to be surrounded by dermis. The reason it does that is it's trying to get that picture's not good enough. All right, I'm going to zoom in more and then we'll zoom out. It's trying to get to the blood in the dermis because if you're going to grow hair, you're going to grow cells. And if you're going to grow cells, you need oxygen, you need blood. Does that make sense? So the base of every hair follicle has, at the bottom of the hair, we call the bottom of this, I should have said it before, the part of the hair that is above the skin we call the shaft. The part that's below the skin we call the root. Are you guys so far? The bottom of the root where it swells we're going to call the bulb. And inside the bulb, we have a sticky uppy part. Oh, what's our sticky uppy part with finger-like extensions? P word? Papilla? We call this the papilla that sticks up, and it has its own capillary and venule to draw the blood away. So it has a fresh supply of oxygen and nutrients to grow new hair. Does that make sense? Everybody good? All right, so let's talk now about hair. We talked about the fact the part below the skin is the root. We talked about the fact the stuff above is the shaft. Those are the first two that we need to know for hair. We talked about the fact the base of the shaft is called, sorry, the base of the root is called the bulb. Do we agree? We talked about the fact that they are in, where did I put my pointer? Damn it. Here we go, pointer. We talked about the fact that this whole thing here, this is the follicle. Do we agree? All right. So that follicle is attached to a muscle called the erector pili. Now I'm going to change the color so things are not so washed out. The erector pili. You see that's written with an A? I want you in your brain to pretend, you'll have to spell it right, but think like it's an E, because that's what holds your hair erect. Have you ever been cold, you get goosebumps and your hair is standing up? Have you ever been in a scary movie and the hair on your neck is standing up? It's standing erect. And the reason it's standing erect is because the muscle, the erector pili muscle, does exactly what every muscle does. Whenever it contracts, it gets shorter. So it pulls when it gets shorter, and that pulls the follicle this way. So if your hair was leaning over like this, and you pull the base of it, now the hair is more erect. Does that make sense? We see that all the time on my sister's, her dog is too old. On my wife's dog. Okay. I would like to say my dog's blameless, but she's not. She's more loud and annoying. But my wife has a very adorable little thing. He's part dachshund, and he's sure that he can like attack and take on the entire world. Same attitude Chihuahua would have, you know. Okay. And so he'll be like sitting in the window on a little table or in the window, and people do these like horrible evil crimes, like walking on his street with a stroller. And he's like, rah, rah. He stands up, and the hair between his shoulders stands up that high. Okay, that's because the erector pili is pulling on the follicles. Does that make sense? You got it? So the erector pili holds the hair erect. Now, there are other things I'm going to point out here. In the follicle, attached to the follicle right here, this is a sebaceous gland, an oil gland. Okay? In the old days, like in the 70s, it used to be popular. People would say, "Oh yes, well, if your hair is getting split ends, you can protect it with a VO5 hot oil treatment." Really, listen, this was a beauty thing back in the day. I was a little kid, but I remember the TV commercials. People would put a saucepan on the stove and fill it up with water, and then get the water just a little bit warm, and then they put the tubes of oil in it to warm up, and then they would take that warm oil, put it on their combs, and brush it through to try and keep the scales of the hair from coming off. Does that make sense? From peeling apart? All right. We'll talk later about the parts of the hair, like the fact that the outer layer is the cuticle. Actually, I will talk about that in just a moment. Anyway, the reason I'm mentioning that VO5 hot oil treatment, these sebaceous glands are oil glands. They release oil into the follicle, and as the hair grows out of the follicle, it gets coated in oil. That helps keep it from drying out and cracking. Now, obviously, we can like blow dry it and sun damage it and overcome that and ruin it, or perm it. But your body tries to protect it. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to write something else about these sebaceous glands. In fact, I'm going to find a picture that shows them labeled, because it's not labeled right here. So, why would the textbook not label it? We'll go for further back. Yeah, not liking that. Okay, going for the old lab book. I told you it's better. I meant it. All right. Here we have labeled a sebaceous gland. You with me? And the sebaceous gland, here it is cut open, but the new lab book actually shows what's happening inside of it better, even though it did not label it. What page was I just on? Anybody remember? Oh, I wasn't in the lab book because the lab book sucks. I was in the lecture book. What? I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. All right, I was on page 199. You guys could have helped me out with that. All right, I was on page 199. Let's go back to our lecture book. You see the sebaceous gland even though they're not labeling it, yes? You see it?
Yes.
What I want you to see is we have these cells full of lipids, and look how they're breaking apart here. What I'm going to write down is ways that glands release things, all right? So we could have merocrine. We'll talk about this in lecture later. We could have apocrine. And we could have holocrine. When you look at the word holocrine, I want you to imagine, I want you to imagine there's a W in front. So it's kind of like the word whole, like entire. Because this is holocrine release of the oil. The cell bursts, the entire cell dies, and it spills the oil into the follicle. Does that make sense? We'll talk later about the other two types of release from different glands when we move further on. But this sebaceous gland is holocrine release. Good? Good? Yep. All right. So we got that. Now, let's go to one more. And I'm thinking... going for the old lab book. Oh, you okay? Yeah, you got it. The other thing to look at is this gland right here. See this thing that looks like a little squiggle? And then it has a long duct that goes all the way to the surface? That is a sweat gland. That is a sweat gland, an eccrine sweat gland. What it does is it makes sweat. By the way, not that you need to know this now, but its release would be the first one, the merocrine, but it releases stuff into the duct and that goes up onto the surface. Does that make sense? Sweat on the surface evaporates, it cools the whole epidermis, and it cools any capillaries that are up in the dermal papilla right next to the epidermis. Then that cool blood goes back to the middle of the body. Are we good so far? All right, so I'm going to go over things here on the list for hair. We talked about the root. You're supposed to say yes.
Yes.
The shaft.
Yes.
The bulb.
Yes.
The follicle.
Yes.
The erector pili muscle.
Yes.
The sebaceous gland.
Yeah.
Yes.
The sweat gland. The sudiferous gland.
Yes.
All right, that's it. Cut the video.